In the quiet town of Millersfield, nestled deep in the heart of rural America, the summer of 1994 was supposed to be uneventful. The kind of small-town summer where days drift lazily by, punctuated only by the occasional roar of a lawnmower or the distant bark of a dog. But that summer, something unthinkable happened, something that would haunt the town for decades. On May 12, 1994, 20 students from Millersfield Middle School disappeared without a trace. It was the final day before summer break, and the halls buzzed with the excitement of freedom and possibility. But for those 20 children, freedom would never come. The day began like any other. The students gathered in their classrooms, teachers marking attendance, and the chatter about summer plans filled the air. But as the final bell rang at 3:15 p.m., the 20 students who had signed up for the special field trip disappeared. No one knew where they had gone, not the teachers, not the parents, and certainly not the police. The principal, Mr. Harold Grayson, had issued orders for the trip, but no destination was ever disclosed. The school bus that was meant to take the children never returned, and for years no one could explain what had happened, and a town on edge. The news spread quickly. Millersfield was a close-knit community where everyone knew everyone else's business. The disappearance shook the town to its core. Vigils were held, search parties organized, and every lead followed with desperate hope. But the trail went cold. The media swarmed the town for weeks, painting grim pictures and asking impossible questions. How could 20 children vanish in broad daylight? What did the principal know? Was there something sinister lurking beneath the town's placid surface? Parents refused to believe their children were gone forever. Some clung to hope that the kids had been kidnapped and would be found safe. Others suspected something darker, a cover-up or a tragedy hidden by those sworn to protect them. The bus driver's log. One of the few pieces of evidence that survived was the driver's log from the school bus. It showed the usual route completed in the morning and early afternoon, but then, minutes after the final bell, a mysterious entry appeared. Field trip. Principal's orders. No destination was written, no route planned, just those words. The driver, a man named Tom Harris, had vanished as well. His house was found abandoned, personal belongings left untouched. It was as if he simply disappeared into thin air, along with the children. Whispers and rumors. As days turned into weeks, rumors began to swirl. Some said the children had run away, scared by a secret the school was hiding. Others whispered about strange lights seen near the old playground at night. A few spoke of a shadowy figure lurking near the bus stop on the day of the disappearance. But no concrete answers ever emerged. The town tried to move on, but the empty seats in classrooms and the hollow silence at playgrounds served as constant reminders of what was lost. 30 years later. Fast forward to 2024. The playground where the children were last seen had long since been forgotten, worn down by time and neglect. But during a routine renovation project, bulldozers suddenly struck steel just beneath the old swing set. Workers uncovered the crushed roof of a school bus, buried under a thick layer of concrete. Inside the wreckage, the driver's log was found, remarkably preserved. It still bore the cryptic note, "Field trip, principal's orders." What had happened that day, 30 years ago, and why was the bus buried right under the playground? As the town held its breath, the answers began to surface. Secrets that would shatter everything they thought they knew about Millersfield and the vanished 20. The morning after the discovery, Millersfield was buzzing with a strange mix of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. News crews swarmed the playground site, their cameras rolling as workers carefully unearthed the buried bus. The thick concrete slab had crushed the vehicle flat, making it a grim puzzle of twisted metal and shattered glass. Detective Laura Mitchell stood at the edge of the excavation site, her arms crossed against the cool spring breeze. 30 years ago, she had been just a child in Millersfield, barely old enough to understand the horror that had ripped through the town. Now, as an experienced investigator with the state police, she had been called in to lead the inquiry. Her mind raced with questions. How could a bus with 20 children simply vanish and then reappear buried beneath a playground? What dark secret had been hidden all these years? A town frozen in time. Laura walked slowly through the playground, her eyes scanning the faded equipment and cracked pavement. The swings creaked in the wind. The slide stood silent and cold. It was almost like stepping back in time, to a place frozen in grief and unanswered questions. She stopped beside an elderly man watching the scene with a heavy heart. The man introduced himself as George Whitman, once a janitor at Millersfield Middle School. His face was lined with age, but his eyes held a spark of memory and pain. "I was there that day," he said quietly. "Saw the bus pull away with those kids. Nobody ever talked about what happened after. It was like the town swallowed the whole thing up." Laura nodded, urging him to continue. "They said the principal ordered the trip, but where were they really going? No one knew. I remember the bus driver, Tom Harris, looked nervous that afternoon, like he didn't want to be there." The principal's shadow. Harold Grayson, the principal, had long been the subject of whispered suspicions. He had resigned shortly after the disappearances and moved away. Attempts to locate him in recent years had failed. The police scoured old records and found a few clues. Grayson had a murky past, with rumors of questionable dealings and a temper that made some teachers uneasy, but nothing concrete tied him to the children's disappearance. Detective Mitchell ordered a search for any possible contacts or relatives. If Grayson was hiding, he might hold the answers. Unearthing the bus. Back at the site, forensic teams combed through the bus remains. Despite decades underground, some items inside had survived. A cracked wristwatch, a child's backpack with faded stickers, and most chillingly, the driver's logbook. The logbook's pages were brittle, but the writing was still legible. The entry, "Field trip, principal's orders," was the last recorded note. There were no other logs after that. Dr. Elena Park, the forensic specialist, frowned as she examined the bus frame. "The damage looks like it happened suddenly," she said. "Like the bus was crushed intentionally, then buried fast. Someone wanted to make sure it never saw the light of day." A whisper of the unknown. In the days following, strange things began to happen around Millersfield. Residents reported flickering streetlights near the playground and unexplained cold spots. Local teenagers claimed to hear faint whispers carried by the wind, children's voices calling out for help. Some dismissed these as tricks of memory and grief. Others feared the playground was haunted by the lost souls of those vanished students. Detective Mitchell tried to stay grounded in facts, but even she felt the weight of something beyond explanation pressing down on the town. A breakthrough. Just when hope seemed dimmest, an anonymous tip arrived at the police station. It was a letter, no signature, only a simple message. "Look beneath the playground's heart. The truth lies buried with the children." With renewed determination, Laura assembled a team to investigate further. Using ground-penetrating radar, they scanned the playground's foundation and found anomalies, dense shapes buried deeper than the bus. What else could be hidden beneath this ground? Bodies? Evidence? Or something even more sinister? As the sun set over Millersfield, Detective Mitchell stood once again at the edge of the playground. The earth beneath her feet held the secrets of a vanished generation, secrets someone had tried to bury forever. And now those secrets were clawing their way back to the surface. The ground-penetrating radar scans revealed something far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Beneath the remains of the crushed bus, the playground's foundation concealed irregular shapes, too large and too numerous to be just debris. The discovery sent ripples of fear through the investigative team. Detective Laura Mitchell gathered her closest officers and forensic experts for a confidential briefing. The unknown shapes could mean only one thing. The earth held more than just the buried bus. What lay beneath was a chilling prospect, one that threatened to rewrite everything the town thought it knew about the 1994 disappearance. a hidden chamber. Armed with excavation permits and heavy machinery, the team began a careful dig under the playground. Days of painstaking labor revealed a sealed underground chamber, a forgotten basement or bunker concealed beneath layers of concrete and soil. The chamber was old, its walls cracked and stained with decades of damp. The air inside was thick with mold and the heavy scent of decay. But what made the hairs on Laura's neck stand up was the unmistakable sound of faint, echoing voices, whispers trapped inside the earth. Inside the chamber, investigators found dozens of personal belongings: torn textbooks, lunchboxes, a single shoe, and scribbled notes with childish handwriting. It was as if the children had been trapped there, their last moments frozen in time. The journal. In a dusty corner, Laura found something that would change everything: a leather-bound journal, surprisingly well preserved. The cover was worn, but bore the initials H.G., Harold Grayson's. Flipping through the pages, she discovered entries filled with paranoia, cryptic warnings and confessions. The principal had written about strange events at the school, unexplained disappearances of animals, shadowy figures seen lurking near the playground, and his growing fear that something was watching them all. The final entries were chilling. The children must be protected, but the darkness grows. The field trip is a last resort. I pray this ends soon. And a town's dark history. Digging into Millersfield's archives, Laura uncovered a pattern. The 1994 disappearance was not the first mysterious event linked to the playground. Over the past century, several children had vanished from the town, always near that same spot. Older residents spoke of legends, a curse tied to the land itself. Some believed the playground was built over an ancient burial ground. Others whispered about occult rituals performed in secret. These stories had been dismissed as folklore, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Fractured families. Meanwhile, the families of the vanished children, many of whom had left Millersfield in despair, began to return. Their faces were marked by decades of grief and unanswered questions. Some sought closure, others revenge. Laura met with a group of parents who demanded answers. One mother, Sarah Whitaker, handed Laura a faded photograph of her son, Brian. His eyes seemed to plead for justice. "We've waited 30 years, she said, voice trembling. "If there's any hope of finding out what happened, you have to dig deeper." The principal's fate. Despite exhaustive searches, Harold Grayson remained missing. Some speculated he had fled, others whispered darker theories, that he might have perished trying to protect the children or had been silenced. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that Grayson was more than a suspect. He might be a victim too. His journal hinted at a man trapped in fear, desperate to shield his students from an unseen terror. Whispers from the darkness. As excavation continued, strange phenomena intensified. Tools vanished mysteriously, equipment malfunctioned, and workers reported feeling watched. Late one night, Laura returned to the site alone. Standing at the edge of the open chamber, she heard it. A soft chorus of voices, faint but unmistakable. They called her name. She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. The vanished children were reaching out, begging to be found, begging for release. The past was no longer buried. It was alive, restless, and hungry for truth. The days following the discovery of the hidden chamber were a blur of activity and mounting dread. The entire town of Millersfield was gripped by a renewed obsession with the vanished children, and the excavation site became a place of pilgrimage for both locals and outsiders. Detective Laura Mitchell found herself at the eye of the storm, tasked with balancing the fragile hope of closure with the harsh realities of an investigation steeped in mystery and fear. A voice from the past. One afternoon, Laura received an unexpected visitor, an elderly woman named Evelyn Harper, who had been a teacher at Millersfield Middle School during the early 90s. Her eyes held decades of sorrow and unspoken truths. "I knew the children," Evelyn whispered, clutching a worn photo album. "And I saw things I never told anyone." She described strange occurrences that had escalated in the months leading up to the disappearances. Inexplicable cold spots in classrooms, lights flickering even on sunny days, and the haunting sound of children laughing when none were around. Most disturbing was her account of Principal Grayson's behavior. "He changed," she said, "became withdrawn, secretive. One day he told me he was protecting us, but from what, he never said." A new lead. Encouraged by Evelyn's testimony, Laura dove back into the school's records and uncovered a series of odd entries in the school's maintenance logs. Repairs had been made repeatedly to the playground's foundation, always under the guise of safety inspections, but no real work had ever been done. Digging deeper, she discovered that the playground had been constructed hastily over what was once a disused quarry pit, a place locals avoided, rumored to be cursed. Experts theorized that the hidden chamber was part of an old mining shaft, sealed off long ago but never properly documented. Echoes of the past. The more Laura learned, the more the story took on a supernatural hue. The voices heard at the site weren't just memories trapped in the earth. They were warnings, echoes of a dark force tied to the land itself. Some townsfolk whispered of the Watcher, an ancient entity said, to claim those who dared to disturb its resting place. The disappearance of the children, the crushed bus, the sealed chamber, all seemed connected to this sinister myth. Families in turmoil. Meanwhile, the return of the families stirred old wounds. Sarah Whitaker's pleas grew more desperate, and others demanded the excavation be halted, fearing what might be unleashed if the ground was disturbed further. Tensions flared at town meetings, dividing Millersfield into factions, those who sought the truth at any cost and those who wanted the past to remain buried. Laura found herself caught in the middle, struggling to keep the peace while racing against time to uncover what really happened. I've done a message from the darkness. Late one night, as Laura reviewed the journal entries in her quiet office, she noticed something she had missed before. A coded message hidden in the margins of Grayson's last notes. Deciphering the cryptic symbols revealed a chilling warning. "They come for the children. Do not trust the ground beneath the playground. The darkness waits." Shaken, Laura realized that the principal's fear was not paranoia. It was a desperate attempt to protect the town from an evil lurking just beneath their feet. The Night Watch, determined to uncover the truth, Laura organized a night watch at the playground with a small team. As darkness fell, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. Hours passed with nothing but the wind's mournful howl, until, suddenly, a figure appeared near the swings. It was fleeting, almost transparent, but unmistakable. A child's silhouette, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. The team froze, hearts pounding. The figure vanished, leaving behind a cold chill and a whisper carried on the wind. "Help us." The playground was no longer just a place of childhood memories. It was a gateway to something far more terrifying, and Laura knew that to save the lost children, she would have to confront the darkness head-on. The sighting of the ghostly figure at the playground sent a shockwave through the investigation team. The eerie plea for help haunted Detective Laura Mitchell, pushing her to dig even deeper into Millersfield's dark past and the mystery surrounding the vanished children. Pieces of a puzzle. Back in the makeshift command center near the excavation site, Laura spread out old maps and blueprints of the town. One detail stood out. The quarry pit beneath the playground was part of a network of underground tunnels once used by miners in the early 1900s. According to archived records, those tunnels had been sealed abruptly after a series of accidents and unexplained disappearances among workers. But no one had ever fully closed off the entire network. Laura speculated that the children might have been trapped, or worse, inside these tunnels, and the bus's burial was a grim attempt to hide the evidence. Found a confession. The breakthrough came when George Whitman, the former janitor, approached Laura with new information. He admitted he had witnessed something on the day the children disappeared, but had kept silent out of fear. "I saw Principal Grayson near the quarry that afternoon," George confessed, voice trembling. "He was carrying something heavy, like he was burying it." George's revelation suggested Grayson was directly involved in hiding the bus and possibly the children themselves. A fractured town. As news of George's confession spread, Millersfield's fragile calm shattered. Families demanded answers. Anger and grief boiled over at public hearings. Some blamed Grayson for a cover-up. Others whispered that darker forces had manipulated the principal into his actions. In the midst of the chaos, Laura struggled to maintain control. She knew the truth was more complicated, that the disappearance and burial were tied to an ancient evil no one wanted to face. And a ritual uncovered, digging into folklore and old newspaper clippings, Laura found references to a secret society rumored to have operated in Millersfield decades ago. The group, known as the Keepers, was said to guard the town against a malevolent spirit tied to the quarry. According to legend, sacrifices were made to keep the entity appeased, sacrifices that coincided suspiciously with the history of disappearances near the playground. Laura began to suspect that the children had been caught in a ritual gone horribly wrong, and the bus burial was an attempt to conceal that dark secret. Descent into the darkness. Determined to uncover the truth, Laura organized a team to enter the tunnels beneath the playground. Equipped with flashlights, cameras, and the latest technology, they descended into the cold, damp darkness. The air was thick, the silence oppressive. Every step echoed as they moved deeper, their lights revealing graffiti and strange symbols etched into the walls, warnings or perhaps clues. Suddenly the ground trembled. A low rumble filled the tunnels, and the team realized they were not alone. The voice again. From the shadows, a voice whispered, soft, urgent, and unmistakably human. "Help us, please." The team followed the sound to a narrow chamber where they found a cluster of belongings, toys, clothes, and a faded photograph of the 20 children. But no children. The chamber's walls bore fresh scratch marks, and the air grew colder still. As the team prepared to retreat, Laura's flashlight flickered, and for a split second she saw them, dozens of small, pale hands pressing against the dirt walls, reaching out in silent terror. The darkness beneath Millersfield was alive. The chilling discovery in the underground chamber left Detective Laura Mitchell and her team shaken to their core. The ghostly hands, the whispered cries for help, and the suffocating darkness revealed a truth far beyond human cruelty. A darkness ancient, supernatural, and insatiable. Confronting the darkness, determined not to leave the children's fate a mystery, Laura reached out to a local historian and folklore expert, Dr. Marcus Shaw. Together, they pieced together the final elements of the puzzle. Dr. Shaw explained that the quarry, and the playground built over it, sat on a convergence of ley lines, channels of Earth's mysterious energy. For centuries, a malevolent spirit had been trapped beneath the ground, feeding on life and demanding sacrifices. The principal, Harold Grayson, had been part of the Keepers, sworn to guard the town by appeasing the spirit. The children's disappearance and the bus burial were a desperate, failed attempt to contain the evil. A ritual of release. Dr. Shaw believed there was a way to break the curse. A ritual of release, to free the trapped souls and seal the darkness once and for all. Gathering the families, town leaders, and the investigative team, Laura prepared to perform the ritual at the playground as night fell. The ceremony was somber, the air thick with sorrow and hope. Candles flickered in the growing darkness. Prayers whispered in trembling voices, voices from the past. As the ritual began, the ground beneath the playground trembled gently, and the air filled with ethereal voices. The children calling out in relief, their presence felt but unseen. One by one, the shadows lifted, and the chilling cold began to fade. Families wept openly as they felt their lost loved ones finally find peace. The final truth. In the aftermath, Laura discovered a final entry in Grayson's journal, left as a warning. If we fail, the darkness will consume us all, but if we succeed, the children will be free, and Millersfield may finally heal. Though scarred, the town began its long journey toward healing. The playground transformed into a memorial for those lost. The town reborn. Years later, Millersfield's playground stood as a symbol of resilience and remembrance. Children's laughter returned, no longer overshadowed by fear. Detective Laura Mitchell, now a local hero, often visited the site, reflecting on the journey from mystery to closure. She knew some darkness still lingered in the world, but in Millersfield light had finally reclaimed its place. The vanished children were gone no more, their story unearthed, their souls at rest, and their town forever changed.